Chat. Oh my. Very hot. We got something big to talk about. And chat, the setup is a little, as I say, it's a little rough. So let me preface. Let me first start by saying, right, I am an extremely big fan of PvE. Let me preface by saying that. There's been a lot of things I've suggested that I wanted them to add so PvE players could have something to do. I have to also understand that the devs don't have a lot of time to really work on PvE stuff sometimes, and so sometimes it's more like it's kind of like something to chew on while we're waiting for the actual PvE content. It's been 18 months since layer 2. Alright. Best example is when I suggested hell mode, and I understand hell mode is mob spam. But at the same time, I knew that layer 2 was probably 5 or 4 months away. And so the idea is that until we get more PvE, it's a temporary challenge. Because at the time, in verse 1, all the PvE was farming bosses and farming the depths without hell mode. Like, just farming the depths. Y'all know how boring that shit is? And so I suggested hell mode, bro. Something that could be something that's challenging to PvE players. I think for the sake of PvE, they gotta do something they gotta change up a little bit. But that does not mean, let me preface also by saying, I don't think there should be PvE nerfs. Because here's the issue. Let me explain what the issue is real quick and why there was a discussion about this in the tester chat. Even Archmage commented on it, but I don't think I can say what Archmage said his plan was. The biggest issue, I think, is that there is at the moment, there's kind of a big difference between the strength of an average top tier PvE build and an average PvP build, right? The reason why people stick to these PvE builds that are super strong and they don't want to get nerfed is because it's their form of getting loot extremely quick. So anytime something is nerfed in PvE, the number one complaint is, oh, why'd they nerf the damage? People say that is because people want to just be able to farm the loot, not think, and just farm the shit because there's nothing better to do. Keeping this mindset for PvE will be harming the game's future potential for actually good shit. So I think there's two options they can do, right? Because I think the biggest difference between a PvP and a PvE build right now is that the PvE build, a little more mindless. You don't really have to think as much. But A, they have access to being able to solo Deluvian. B, they can farm out things way quicker. And if you're ever on a PvP build wanting to get fucking Diver's Light Plate, it is sometimes a lot more tough, especially things like Deluvian Hell mode. And then it takes a lot longer. Have you ever done Etheron on a light or medium weapon build? Well, that shit is like fucking 4 or 5 cycles for some niggas, bro. I think that is one big thing that I think they should close the gap on. And there was definitely some interesting solutions given, right? But I wanted to talk about them. Why is bro shirtless? Hey, bro, it's hot. Okay, it's hot. This is one solution that I thought could work. I think the biggest thing that carries PvE builds at the moment is access to DVM. What is the issue with this though? Like, why is this an issue? The issue is not the fact that, well, some people say it makes PvE too easy, but I think it's honestly fine. I think what happens though is that it pushes PvE players in such a direction that A, their build is way weaker for PvP. You see what I'm saying? It's way weaker, right? And so once your build is super weak for PvP, you're not going to be as enticed to want to even fight motherfuckers on it, right? Which I don't think that's the best mindset. Build matters way more than DVM. I'd have to disagree probably. I'm not gonna lie. I know that obviously certain light weapon builds, even then some people disagree. I know there's certain builds for everything, right? But I think for the most part, right, DVM that's a big ass buff. That is a big ass buff, bro. Plus 60, plus 70% damage is huge. I know certain mantras do more, right? For the most part, right, like a big chunk of that damage does come from that big ass damage boost, right? So basically, to simplify what I think could be done, in my opinion, I think one of the biggest things they could do, right, if DVM really stays as an issue, right, or it causes too much of a gap, one thing I've heard is that DVM is basically kind of phased out. And then what happens is that every build is essentially like around 40 to 50 to 60% DVM automatically because they tone down the health of every monster. PvE and PvP builds being separate needs to stay. I disagree. I think it's just, it creates too much of a gap that will make it very difficult in the future to add in PvE content that isn't like overwhelming for one side or the other, right? If they add this, like think about it, chat. this is the conquest content that we can get in the future. That's only going to make build, as time goes on, builds will only get stronger, bro. How many God Slayer versions of a PvE build are we going to get? Consider how strong PvE builds have gotten since verse 1. It only keeps going up. Does that make sense? And so with Conquest, a bunch of content's coming. I guarantee you there's going to be even more things that make a PvE build stronger, and then your average build is going to stay here because you're not going to be min-maxing to do all that shit. So the gap is only getting bigger, right? Which I don't think is healthy, because now guess what? If they want to drop a new boss that is difficult, genuinely difficult for the PvE top tier builds, what's going to happen when the average Joe Smo tries it? They're going to get fucked. It's either going to take way too long or it's going to be far too difficult. Do you understand what I'm saying? Right? And so take a top tier PvE player and your average Joe Smo, right? Now, your average Joe Smo build might be like 440 health. They don't have any DVM, like 10% DVM. Maybe they're running Rapier fucking, I don't know, Lightning, right? Rapier Lightning, or fucking medium weapon Ice, right? Nothing too crazy, right? You take them on that build and you switch it with the build with the PvE player. And the thing is that what's crazy is that the guy on the PvE build stands a much better chance at fighting against some of these mobs, unless the guy doesn't know how to fight monsters at all. But like, you see what I mean? Like, the build boosts his power level so much, when in reality, the experienced PvE player, that skill doesn't translate over that well to, to other builds. It's just a matter of if you're able to have the appropriate damage output to be able to do things such as, because it's our only current example, soloing Diluvian. Does that make sense? In order to take down this very difficult boss, you need 65% DVM, Umbral Evan Spear, and at the moment, Umbral Knight is carried by a bug. You need Umbral Knight Evan Spear, and because like, imagine they have a new boss mechanic. Imagine they have a new boss mechanic where you need to kill a boss in a certain amount of time, right? And then we're pushing the game towards everyone running a few specific builds in order to attempt certain pieces of PvE. Does that sound like good game design? A big step that they could do in order to make PvE more interesting is add mobs that are way more interesting, bro. Come on. I don't want just like the owl, but like it's in layer 2 and it has a, like, yeah, obviously they can make things do more damage and more health, but I think the mechanics that are things that can really make things interesting, and things that are like RNG based or chance based, right? I know some people want it to be like complete wave 50 Diluvian, and then off rip you can just pick a relic off rip. But at the same time, some people want that RNG kind of grind factor because they want to feel special whenever they get something that's extremely rare. So I think it's a matter of preference for what people want and what the devs want to do. Because either way, I'm okay with kind of either. Look, either way, I'm making the 8-minute video off. Hey, big, keep it above 50. Either way, I'm making an 8-minute video off that bitch. But like I said, right, in my personal opinion, I like the idea of being able to fucking find something run like, yo. But I also like being able to get shit quickly and it not being a long ass tedious grind. So I don't know, but I think having some like rare stuff is always like, it's always kind of nice when it's